Hey there YouTube, I got another video coaching review and a bit of a guest in this video here. This one is again from Scott, and it is not trad archery or traditional style archery, it is primitive archery. So excuse my misstatement in the previous video coaching review that I did with Scott, but he's looking for much of the same that he was before, and my thanks go out to him for allowing me to use his video coaching review for content on my channel. So thanks. And before I get started, if you are interested in a video coaching review, don't hesitate to visit my website, Kaminski.com, and you'll find information on how to set up a video coaching review for yourself. There is the option to allow me to use it on my YouTube channel for some content. It does help other people out there who are struggling with the very same issues that you are, so do consider hitting that yes button in the checkout window while you are considering video coaching review. Anyway, enjoy this one, and thanks again. Hey there, Scott. Thanks for submitting another video coaching review, and also thank you for letting me use your content on my YouTube channel. That helps out a lot. So we'll get right into your video coaching review. So it looks like I misspoke, and you are more of a primitive archer, not necessarily a trad archer, according to the category you're shooting in, so my apologies there. So you're limited, no plastic or carbon, just natural materials, wooden self-nock arrows, and you've been doing well, so that's good. I'm glad the last video coaching review worked out for you. So it looks like you're working on the tips I gave you the first time. If I remember right, it was release and follow through along the swing plane, and really not peaking and driving that tension forward. So peaking is a hard one to quit, you know, and you keep hearing your voice saying, shoot the shot and see how it feels and look at the results. It does do that. It sounds like it's what you're saying here. When the shot goes right, it feels right. So, you know, my best word of advice on that is kind of, you know, definitely ingrain it as you're telling yourself to do so. I like to tell myself to do things before I actually draw back. It just seems to stick in a little bit more as long as you're prepared for the actual event of shooting itself. So you still find yourself throwing your bow hand to the right. If you concentrate and consciously drive the bow hand towards the target, the accuracy is greatly improved. Good, I'm glad to see that. Maybe another way to think about it would be to kind of use the bow arm and the bow hand as your throwing hand, like where you're trying to reach out and push that arrow or touch that arrow or push the arrow actually into the target butt itself with the hand. That may help quite a lot. For me, basically, it's really just try to get it to the point of where driving to the center and really making sure that you are pushing to the center until you hear the arrow hit the target. You know, I think that can definitely help for sure. So you're still working on follow through or lack thereof, as I put it before. Your plucking or the plea, creeps in from time to time. You have to remind yourself to keep drawing hand close to your face and rotate around. The smooth follow through so many people seem to enjoy evades you. All right, so I'll look at that and hopefully be able to explain a bit more. And you've started having a more conscious shot cycle, which I recommended. You stare at the target and say, "You've got this." Take a deep breath, exhale, dropping. Yep. Okay, and then great. So that's great, excellent. You're working on a conscious shot cycle, so that means you're doing things on purpose more. That'll come more natural with time, and it will help ingrain all these things that you're working on, especially if you're trying to talk yourself through it. It'll happen and it'll become more subconscious, so it becomes more automated. But I would never stop the conscious shot cycle, especially when you go to a competition. That is the most important time to continue to do that. Because the pressure can mount and it can, throw you for a loop. And that's when you forget things, and that's why people's scores aren't as high in competition in general. You mentioned seeing my finger creep around. So now when you okay, so that's grabbing the bow right before you release. You were gripping the bow a little bit sometimes, but I think that was in anticipation for throwing the bow to the side to peak, I believe. That would be my guess. Now you need to make sure your fingers are on the side of the grip. Excellent. You shoot about 100 arrows a day, various distance, mostly 20 yards. Thoughts on improving follow through? You're not allowed to string walk, of course, because you need to touch the arrow and touch the nock. That's why you have the high anchor point. And yes, exactly. So string walking appears to do what you are doing with your hand. So instead of me moving my anchor up to get the arrow closer to my eye, I string walk down, that moves the arrow up. So I understand that, and I understand the point of anchoring closer to the eye, especially at a close proximity target like 20 yards, because then you can almost just look down the arrow and essentially gap shoot or point with the point in the same place. So I understand the need for the high anchor, absolutely. We'll get right into it. This is a side view. And we'll see how we go. Very similar to before, slightly different though. It does look a bit more dynamic, especially with the bow arm. So that's good. So I think something that may help, I'm not sure. I'm going to see if I can see what you're exactly doing in this setup position before you draw the bow back. So what I am curious to know is what you are doing here. Are you in this position, because it does change from shot to shot. Sometimes you have the bow up a little higher and this hand then up a little higher too. I'm assuming you're kind of pre-setting the arrow on the target face potentially. That one was a longer hold with the bow jumping further to the right compared to these other ones here. Let's see. So that one was a much shorter setup time and a much shorter at full draw time, but the bow seemed to jump a little bit better towards the target. That one a little more to the right. Again, a little bit to the right. That one was better as far as the bow arm is concerned. You know, what I'm thinking to try to help with the follow through and help with the, sorry, let that truck go by. Help with the follow through and help with the bow hand is it's together. Everything all at once needs to just kind of, you want, for me, what I feel is two things. It's the same thing, same movement, same thing is happening, but I can explain it in two different ways in case it makes a bit more sense to you. So when I am aiming and then I go to release and follow through, what I am feeling is a compression of my back or an expansion of my chest. So as I'm pulling and I release and follow through, I can feel a stretch here, but I can also feel a compression back here, a squeezing of the muscles. And it's really just trying to feel that power of the bow be more of a dynamic launch almost. So not necessarily hitting a wall when you're at full draw, but something that could help, and I'm seeing in your form on the shots, especially where you take a little bit more time while at full draw, I can see you're creeping just a little bit, right? But a little bit is more than you should want to have ideally. And I think the creep is coming from the way that you release the bow and you let go of the tension, and this bow hand moves this way and the release hand will move kind of this way a little bit like that. So those two things and will cause you to creep forward and lose your draw length. So what I mean by creeping, I know know what it is, but I want to point it out in a shot while you're actually doing it. So you get back to full draw, you're aiming, you're clearly aiming here, you open your eye to set your target, you aim or get ready, and then you cut it loose. But in this time frame where you are wide-eyed to now look at your arrow point, look at your arrow point. As we go forward in time, as you close your eyes, that arrow is already starting to move forward as you start to release, and you're still grabbing the bow. But let's find the one where you're holding a little bit longer. Not that one. Let's see. It's somewhere in here. That one. So this one you have a little bit longer hold time. See how far back your arrow is, close to the shelf. And as we go forward, you'll see the point peeking out more and more and more and more. And as you're gripping the bow hand's moving, all sorts of things are moving towards the direction that your release breaks. So you'll see this bow hand jumping low and to the right, and this string hand popping out and plucking, right? So what is going on is, as you are executing the shot, as you are trying to basically get to the point of where you are cutting it loose, right? You are already starting this way. So when you go to release and follow through, of course, this has to continue happening. The whole main deal of the style that I try to shoot with and the form that I try to shoot with is building upon your tension and your direction and everything like that. So the tension being the bow wants to pull you forward and in. So you have to build tension against it. You have to be pulling back and you have to be pushing forward. I've talked about this a lot, so excuse me if it's just repetitive, but it's really important to note because the tension, it's simple. The bow, you have to resist that tension. If you weren't pushing, the bow would come back at you. If you weren't pulling, you'd collapse, okay? So that's the tension. Now the direction is, which way are you pushing and pulling or rotating or expanding or anything like that? And when I go forward in time and you can see the arrow creeping forward and you can see the bow hand actually moving down and to the right already before you even cut the shot loose, I can see that your direction is going in the exact manner that your release and follow through is. So the release and follow through is this, okay? And what that direction is telling me is, at full draw, what you're doing to resist the tension of the bow and the direction is you're already going like this. And so if you're already going like this, when you go to release, that's just going to happen. The release is a reaction, not an action. It is totally something that is just basically based on everything you've built up while at full draw. So if you're not building your tension in the correct manner and in the correct way while at full draw, the release is never going to be good. So I can, see that you're trying and working through it. But what I think you really need to do while at full draw, not just before the shot and talking to yourself and saying those things and having a conscious shot cycle, you must also, while you are aiming, I argue when you do that eye open to kind of check and make sure your thing is all set up. Also make sure you check into your body as far as, how am I building tension against this bow? Am I building it around and behind me or down and behind me? Because of the high anchor, the high elbow, again, your tension must follow this. So the lower my anchor, the more around my tension can be. The higher my anchor, obviously I'm over exaggerating, the lower my tension has to be. So just follow the tip of the elbow to the anchoring of the shoulder, follow that line. So even if you're up here, pulling down along that line to compress your back, and that front half driving forward towards the target, at the same time before you actually really start aiming is going to be when you really should do that. So it would be pull back, anchor, set your sight with your eyes, right? Get set your tension, then aim, then cut it loose. And then this is going to happen. It's going to be more automatic and more automated with that release and follow through. Again, Annabelle, you're making an appearance. The whole point of the style that I shoot with is the tension that is at full draw, the tension that I build while I pull back is the tension that I'm at full draw, is the tension that I release and follow through with. So again, the whole point of why you can't follow through how you're trying to and how I've suggested to is because the tension while you're at full draw is not that same manner. Your release is a reaction. It reflects what you have done prior to that. So if you look at it that way, it might be a little easier to control this release and follow through in a controlled manner. So hopefully that makes sense. We'll go to another view. We'll do a side close view. Oh. Let's hear what you're saying.
I got this. Not the arrow. Pull the arrow back to the center of the bow. It's exactly the right spot.
Yep.
Pull this finger around the bow a little bit forward. Have these fingers at a 45-degree angle so you're not in close to the bow. That's definitely what I want to do. So, I got this. Here we go.
Good. So I do like the routine. I like that you pretty much have that down pat. I think that's excellent. So instead of potentially the here we go statement, you can still say here we go, but before here we go, try to tell yourself to build tension. Build that tension down and around in the backside and forward to the target just enough. Just enough. And I'm not saying to like pull back further. I'm just saying add a little bit of tension along this plane, down and around and forward. So build tension, here we go. And then do that. That's what I would do, and I think that would be a really great start for you to get that moving forward. Oh, excuse me. Not before here we go. After here we go, before you say, what was it? No matter what. So before no matter what, is where I would add it. So after here we go, before no matter what is when you should say build tension and then cut it loose. So that one looked good. I could see you settle into it a whole lot more while at full draw, so watch this one. And you'll see a very big difference. More calm, more stability, less movement, and the release and follow through are better. Because you had set that tension a little bit better because you had to. You were holding the bow for a little bit longer. So during that calming time frame is when you should start that building of the tension, and that's right before you cut it loose. That's going to be the best time that you can add that, and it's going to make a huge difference if you can integrate that permanently. See, and that one looked pretty good too. So the more you are comfortable with this, of talking through it out loud, the better it's getting. And you can get there. It's just, again, the release is a reaction and not an action. So trying to build that tension first is going to make the biggest difference in the overall shot itself, in my opinion. So you have some Orpingtons as well. Yeah, so it's similar to before, and it's just the release and follow through, the bow hand and the release hand action is not going to go away unless you're building that tension while you're at full draw. It's going to make the biggest difference. And when you're not talking through it, it's a much quicker shot that you're doing as well, you can tell. And more of that bow hand jump to the right is happening. Again, I believe because the longer you hold it back, I'm not advising to hold back any longer. Please don't do that. But what I'm thinking is the longer you're holding back, the longer you have the ability to start to use that tension to pull the bow back and or build that tension against the bow as I'm talking about, because you've kind of settled into it more. So when you get to full draw, the way your arm moves is fine, but right here at this position, pulling more in, like from the tip of your elbow, hinging down and around, down this direction towards your shoulder, is the way to really make this shot break correctly. And when you do this, it's going to automatically transfer more of the tension through these shoulders into this wrist to the bow and pushing the arrow straight and not pushing that whole system towards the right. It's really going to make a big difference. I think that's really the only way to go. And just having that calming moment at full draw, building the tension, will allow you to have a way cleaner release and follow through. And it's going to make a huge, huge difference in your consistency, I believe. You know, you're doing well because you shoot a lot of arrows. You know, 100 arrows a day it's a fair amount of arrows, and that's definitely no small amount of arrows. You know, I think you know, you can make a lot of progress and obviously shoot quite well with about 100 arrows a day. So that's great that you're willing to do that. And I think trying to slow down the mental approach while at full draw is going to help a lot. Now, everything else looks pretty good. You know, I don't see anything that I would really necessarily change other than that tension. Here, you can see your index finger is still out a little bit past the bow, and as I go forward in time, you still squeeze like this and grip it in anticipation of the shot breaking. So what I would suggest is be right here at full draw, where your index finger is actually resting against the front of the riser, not necessarily, or the bow, because you don't have a riser, but in the right here, it's just out in front, which could be fine, but there's no way to hold onto the bow without a finger sling. So being right here while at full draw, I think is going to really help you prevent you from influencing the torque on the bow, because if it's resting there already and the next little bit that the shot breaks and you just kind of squeeze against it instead of this whole movement, especially before the arrow's even gone, it's going to influence everything a lot less. It'll also prevent you from doing this kind of throwing to the right. So that's kind of where I would start. And, you know, I think that this is, it's easier to see, especially now that you've talked me through your mental shot cycle through the shot and given me that video of you talking about it literally and then also describing it in text helps a lot too. So hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully this gets you in the right direction. Please don't hesitate to shoot me an email with some questions or anything along those lines, because I'm happy to help. And so far, you know, I can see that you're adding these new things in, and it will make a difference, especially if you integrate that. Here we go. After here we go, build the tension, and then no matter what afterwards with the release and follow through. I think that's going to be very a big change for you, a big change for the better. So hopefully that helps. And again, don't hesitate to ask any questions, and